Hope everyone is arriving well. We'll get started in just a few moments.
While everyone's filtering in, I'm going to play a short video sent to us from the folks at Emerson.
My hometown is just like any other city. There are positives and negatives. And unfortunately, I grew up where there was a lot of negative. The criminal activity outweighed education. It was just more about survival. Being a son of refugees, there were social and financial strains that seemed impossible to overcome. And growing up where I grew up, in the environment I was in, an education didn't fulfill the needs of being who you were and what you needed to do to survive. Just making it home from school was a struggle. It didn't matter whether you were getting good grades. My parents wanted me to graduate high school and pursue some sort of higher learning, but it was difficult. They had only been in the US a short time, and they never went to a university, so they didn't know how to help me. As I was trying to figure out my own path, so were they. Before the EPI program, prison for me was all about making my body tired, physically exhausting myself, so I wouldn't think about the time I didn't have, the time away from my family, my age, the time I was wasting. Once I was in the EPI program, it was no longer about flexing my physical abilities or my muscles. It was knowing that by picking up a book, I was creating a different way of being, finding new strengths and abilities that I didn't know I had. The EPI faculty never saw an incarcerated person. They only saw a student who was willing to learn and grow. When you're incarcerated, you have no access to electronic equipment, so we would spend hours writing essays by hand, 3 to 5 pages long, sometimes 3 to 4 drafts. The faculty supported us, and they were very attuned to our limitations. They knew it was about the process, not the deadline. Education was something that I didn't see as being valuable. But now, having gone through 2-3 years of it, it feels like something I don't want to stop. Being able to come to Emerson College has allowed me to become aware of the opportunities that are available to me. Not only has this opportunity allowed me to want to give back to the community, but it also showed me how I can pursue these goals in the most effective way. The post-incarcerated population is full of people who need a lot of help. I believe education is what levels the playing field for us as we re-enter the outside world. I hope as I continue to further my education, I can make an impact on individuals like me coming home.
Thanks, Meg. I would like to welcome you all to the last community conversation of 2023. My name is Susie Bannon, and I am the Assistant Director of the Alliance for Higher Education in Prison. The topic of today's community conversation is the book Education Behind the Wall: Why and How We Teach College in Prison. It is beautiful, beautiful writing, also very informative. This book is comprised of case studies that address issues of power differentials in the classroom, education in social context, as well as the logistics and how-to of teaching college inside. And it provides essential guidance for faculty, administrators, educators, students, and anyone invested in prison education in terms of the best way to prioritize the needs of students and navigating the challenges that come along with teaching inside. It also places the work of higher education in prison in the context of issues of race, economics, and gender, so it is very important. And so today you're going to hear from panelists who were involved in the creation of this book about what it means to them, about their contributions, and that conversation will be led by Dr. Manisha Gelman. And so I'm going to introduce our panelists today, read their bios, and then I'll turn things over to Manisha. First, my co-moderator and panelist, Dr. Manisha Gelman, is Associate Professor of Political Science in the Marlborough Institute for Liberal Arts and Interdisciplinary Studies at Emerson College. Manisha is currently president of the Human Rights section of the American Political Science Association and serves as an expert witness on Mexico and El Salvador in asylum proceedings in U.S. immigration courts. She has published numerous books and articles on rights issues around the world. Manisha is also founder and director of the Emerson Prison Initiative, which brings a Bachelor of Arts pathway to people currently incarcerated in Massachusetts. Dr. Kara Moyer-Duncan is Associate Professor of Africana Studies and Assistant Director for the Emerson Prison Initiative at Emerson College. She holds a PhD in African Studies from Howard University, an MPS in Africana Studies from Cornell University, and a BA in Black Studies and Sociology from UC Santa Barbara. Her book, Projecting Nation, South African Cinemas After 1994, examines the ways in which national and transnational forces have impacted the South African film industry. Kara has also published in academic journals such as the Journal of African Cinemas and the popular outlet Africa is a Country. And last but not least, Mr. Charles Rosario is a 2022 graduate of Emerson College with a BA in Media, Literature, and Culture. He enrolled at Emerson in 2017 via the Emerson Prison Initiative while incarcerated at the Massachusetts Correctional Institution at Concord, where he completed all of his coursework and his degree as part of EPI's first cohort. Charles grew up in Worcester, Massachusetts, and moved to Boston in 2023. He works at UTech, a nonprofit in Lowell dedicated to helping young people overcome the challenges of poverty, gang involvement, and unemployment. And he also serves as a member of the EPI Advisory Council. Now that we are all acquainted, Dr. Gelman, I'll hand things off to you.
Thank you so much, Susie. And I just want to give a huge thank you to the entire Alliance team, Meg and Susie and Ved, for putting on such a phenomenal, exceptional conference last week. I am still glowing from it. It was just really powerful to get to be together in that space with people across so many different sectors of this work, thinking about how to do it better, how to center the voices of incarcerated and formerly incarcerated people, and really how to think critically about the impact of college access. So I feel so much gratitude towards the whole Alliance team, and it's really an honor to get to come together in the immediate aftermath of that to talk in depth with folks that showed up today about this book, which came out last September, and we have had some local celebrations of it, and I've been able to take it to a few other colleges and universities, but life gets in the way of trying to talk about it more fully, and this is exactly the community that I think is most engaged in it. So I see a few of you that I think maybe got your raffle copies at NCHEP, so hopefully this can be a good introduction to the book if you haven't cracked it yet. To start off, I wanted to just give an overview about the process of making the book, talk about some of the issues that come up in it and some of the themes covered, and then I'm going to hand it over to Kara to talk about some of the issues around accreditation and the curricular pathway, and then Charles will be able to speak to the process of this work from the student and now alumni perspective. So to start, the major theme of the book is centering incarcerated students as agentive learners, which was such a prominent theme at the conference. And I know so many people in their programs are doing this work already. We really address the issue of power and how power operates in traditional academic spaces and how it operates for the contributors in our volume in college classrooms in prison. A lot of that has to do with themes of humility in recognizing the way that the professor, often the sage on the stage, so to speak, can humble themselves and become learners in those spaces, but that it's a mutual process, that there is teaching and learning that's happening across students and professors. Arguably, that's what should be happening on traditional campuses too, but there are specific dynamics that factor into that when we're teaching and learning in carceral spaces. The structural intervention about college and prison, I think, is something that from the folks I know on the call, many of whom I met at the conference, I know this is something you are already very clear on. But what we talk about in the book is that there are many different ways to center the structural intervention of education in relation to mass incarceration. The structural story of why people end up in prison is not separate in many ways from what's happening in the classroom and the way that we are dealing with power in those spaces. So we want to really acknowledge the power structures that shape what it means to be in the classroom in the first place. With that in mind, and I see one of my Mass Department of Correction colleagues on this call, I also just want to say thank you to them for working with us, for allowing us to bring our work into the prisons in Massachusetts where we work. And like most programs in the US, the work doesn't happen without those trust-based relationships where departments of correction and college and prison programs figure out how to work together. It can be difficult often in the beginning and over time to find ways to reconcile different kinds of different visions around what the goals and the outcomes of programs are. But I feel good in Massachusetts that we've found ways to align the outcomes of similar and also different visions in some ways. We may have somewhat different visions of what public safety is, but we understand that there's a shared process that education can play a role in getting us to mutually beneficial outcomes. So thank you to Mass DOC in that. And I also just want to be really clear that the book that we're talking about today also went through a process of review by Mass DOC. So this may be true in many other college and prison programs, but as volunteers for DOC, we're subject to their media policy guidelines, which means we can't publish or speak out publicly on the work that we do inside prison without having specific permission from their communications team. And so it was an interesting journey of taking this manuscript to them and noting the places of tension as well as the places that worked well for them to identify. And I'll just flag one of the issues is around the terms like restricted movement versus solitary confinement. And these are terminological differences that some of you may have encountered in your work in different spaces. I think it was an important conversation, even if we have our own personal definitions about these terms and how they work, to figure out how to be okay enough with the terms that DOC requires in relation to the ideas that we're talking about. So I guess I would encourage people to think about the terminology that we use in different kinds of spaces. Many of us do a code switching in our lives already. I talk about this in my non-prison related scholarship in terms of multilingual communities and how multilingual folks will switch between languages and between behaviors in different spaces. And I think it's a valuable thing to reflect on when we think about writing about this work in the first place, which is what we have done here. In terms of my goal of the volume, one of many goals is to offer a vision of public safety that includes a structural definition and a tangible solution. So as a political scientist, I look at conflict and violence in many cases around the world as things that come from unequal access to insufficient resources. And in the book, many which I'll turn to talking specifically about in a minute, many of the chapters talk about unequal access to insufficient resources. So one of the chapters is written by a former Boston public school teacher who taught for decades within the major urban public school system. And she talks about some of the similarities and differences across teaching in BPS versus teaching behind the wall. It's illuminative in looking at the role that structure and power plays in shaping educational access for folks in the classroom. Another one of the chapters, written by Emerson College librarian, talks about the research process for moving materials into the hands of college students. And the video that played was at the opening of the session was made a couple of years ago. And I'm happy to say that since then, we have gotten permission to purchase laptops for incarcerated students in the program. And so they have offline laptop access. At the time the film was made, we did not have that. And so most of the students in our first cohort did all of their academic work without that access, but subsequent cohorts are able to have that offline laptop access. But the librarian looks really explicitly at how do you do research in the context of no internet. And many of the folks who have programs on this call may have the JSTOR abstract database, and then a process for moving matching articles with abstracts and matching students with those articles. Just as a sidebar, right now, Massachusetts is piloting access to full articles through JSTOR, and that has it's had a few hiccups, but it's generally wonderful to be able to get more researchability directed towards our students. But the chapter that I point people to the most in this book is actually that chapter on research access, because it's something I think every college and prison program is grappling with. And we just lay it out really systematically. It's not that we have invented the process or done it perhaps better than other programs, but we provide the forms that we use. We try to make it really transparent so that folks that are maybe struggling with that aspect of their programming or in the early days of it can have some really concrete takeaways from the book. A few other chapters that I just want to highlight before turning over to Kara is Justin McDevitt and Alicia Saraziski talk about their doing senior theses and what it means to actually do remote internships in prison space. These are, again, things that a lot of programs struggle with, and trying to find ways to address senior level educative experiences. So for folks that are interested in that, and they're not on this call, but reading the chapter would provide some insight into how that's happening. And then I think the disciplinary breadth of the volume is also useful to highlight, because we have an economist writing a chapter on teaching quantitative reasoning, but also literature professors talking about the value of poetry and looking at more humanities-based content. So in that way, it tries to span a range of disciplines and issues that come up in this work. And I will hand it over to Kara to talk about some of the curricular planning and accreditation issues that she talks about in her chapter.
Thank you, Manisha, and hello to everyone. I'm delighted to be here with you today. So I wrote the chapter in the book focused on logistics, the logistics of preparing to teach inside. And so I thought I'd begin by reading a brief excerpt from the book, and then talking about some concrete issues, accreditation, degree planning, the logistics of faculty preparing to teach inside. So I'll start with, it's the first paragraph of the chapter. The Emerson Prison Initiative offers a robust liberal arts curriculum with rigorous standards based on the principle that access to a high-quality education that recognizes the potential of each human being is a fundamental human right. As the assistant director for EPI, my responsibilities include supporting faculty as they prepare to teach inside a prison, and serving as a liaison between our program and the Massachusetts Department of Correction with regard to curricular and faculty matters. The role of liaison can be a complicated and sometimes contradictory position to navigate, as I attempt to reconcile my own critical perspective on mass incarceration and commitment to academic freedom with the policies and practices of DOC. I'm always cognizant of and wrestling with this tension. Ultimately, I've decided to use my position at a liberal arts college known for its niche in communication in the arts to respond to the calls of incarcerated people who are asking for access to a transformative education that can allow them to realize different possibilities for themselves. So Manisha alluded to this, but I will expand on it, a bit. EPI is a program of Emerson College, but we're really positioned between two institutions and their associated bureaucracies. So we have to work with the Department of Correction and also with the administration of Emerson College. And both are really essential partners in the work that we're doing. But both also have their policies, their mission, their own particular sets of concerns and ways of doing things that we have to work with. And as someone who handles a lot of the logistics of running the program and planning, I'm in the middle, I feel like, of these two bureaucracies all the time. And it's really important to develop positive working relationships with folks at DOC and also college staff in order to facilitate what we're doing in a way that upholds our standards and the integrity of our program. It's not always easy, but it is possible, right? And so I am working with the Department of Correction on approval for our program. Like, what courses are we going to run during the next academic year? Classroom space, like where are these classes going to be held? Security clearance for the faculty and teaching assistants we have going inside the prison. Those kinds of logistics. Laptops, how are they going to be accessed? What are the rules around printing? And then on the other hand, working with the college administration, working with the registrar to get, course enrollment going and to have sections for our prison classes, figuring out how to pay faculty. I mean, these are things that are outside of our normal responsibilities as faculty at the college. Manisha and I normally wouldn't deal with these kinds of things. Getting academic approval for the courses that we're going to run in the prison through the required departments or faculty if need be. So that gives you a sense of the entities we're working with and a lot of the logistics that come with it. EPI is accredited. It's an accredited, MCI Norfolk is an accredited campus of Emerson College. We're accredited by the New England Commission of Higher Education. So I don't know if others on the call have gone through the process of accreditation. It is quite rigorous, but it's really important. One, if you want to grant degrees for your program, to go through that process. And then two, to demonstrate that you have rigorous standards for the program, that the expectations, the content, the rigor, all of those things are comparable to what's happening on the main campus. And having the accreditation helps us to show that. So in the case of EPI, we went through an initial substantive change application to add the prison as a remote degree granting location of the college. We then had to do an update, like a report on how that was going about a year later, as we prepared for a NECHI site visit, where an external evaluator came and met with folks on campus and then also at the prison as part of a report that he then issued in support of our program. And we're considering applying for the Pell Grant. And if we're going to apply for the Pell Grant, we have to go through an additional substantive change application in order to get approval for that. That's required by the federal government if you are going to accept Pell. With the substantive change applications and the site visit, your regional accreditors' standards for accreditation are really the guidepost for your application. So NECHI has 9 standards, and each of those standards become an area of focus. You write a short narrative about each of the standards with regards to how your program meets those standards. And I'm happy to talk more about that if you have specific questions. We also developed a degree pathway just for our EPI students. It's an interdisciplinary degree pathway that reflects the area of studies that Emerson is most known for: visual media arts, writing, literature, and publishing, and the liberal arts. We adapted that to fit the carceral context. Emerson is known for its film school, but we can't run production classes inside because we can't get the equipment and the technology approved. So we took the studies component of that program and combined it with the studies component of the writing, literature, and publishing program, and of course our liberal arts context, to develop an interdisciplinary degree program for our students. And we have in the book an example of what we call our degree pathway. That helps us. You can see the picture here, but I'm also going to share my screen. I'm just letting you know you can find it in the book. We created this to help us track progression towards the degree for each one of our cohorts. So we make this for each cohort, and then if students get off track, sometimes students are like temporarily relocated to another prison, for example. They might miss a semester. We can also individualize this if students are off track from their cohort. But we use this document to track the liberal arts requirements that are required of every student at the college. We have a section for elective courses. We have a section on the required courses for the major, and then the elective courses for the major. And then also we have a minor in economics, and we trace that here too. So as students make their way through the degree, we're always updating this document with courses they've completed, with courses that are in progress, and with courses that are scheduled but not yet run. And if you have questions about how we do this tracking, I am happy to take those. And I think with that, I will turn it over to Charles.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I feel like this education while I was incarcerated was one of the best things that ever happened to me. So I'll just begin with when I was young, one of the values that never left me, regardless of where I was or where I found myself in my life, was the value of education. That was something that my mother really made sure she instilled in me from a very young age. And when I was incarcerated, I still pursued education. I would read books on my own, pursue education that way. When I was offered the opportunity to apply for this program, I immediately jumped on it. It was something that instantly caught my attention and my interest. And I was, well, I would say lucky enough, but others would say that I earned it, and I would agree on being selected to be one of the first cohort of EPI. And going through the process, it wasn't easy. We were also hit with COVID during our time in EPI, and there were many challenges. Our environment, obviously, this being a program behind walls, that played a major structural barrier to a lot of the things that we were trying to accomplish. But with the help of the professors and the tutors, we managed to make something great of it. And it was very transformative for me, man. And it helped in so many ways, identity being one of the key ones. A lot of us incarcerated, we come from a place where this opportunity to go to college is not, it's not a reality for many of us. So when we're in this space, when we're incarcerated and then we're offered this opportunity, it's like so revolutionary in our thinking of who we are as people, right? On our identity, when we start to feel like we actually do belong in these academic spaces, and we don't feel like we are alien to them. So that was huge for me. Also, as now a returning citizen, I've been home for 6 months, and I've been, putting my degree and my education to use. I've been hired by UTech, which is a nonprofit youth organization. I've been put in a position where I'm able to help other young men not only stay out of trouble and leave the streets alone and change their lives, but also pursue education. So that's one of the main things that I try to instill in these young men as well is the value of education, like my mother did to me. And it's powerful. It's life changing. And you know, the just not even the degree or the knowledge itself that we gain, but just what it takes, the discipline, the rigor of going to college in that environment for 5 years, 4 years, however long it takes, the level of discipline, the level of commitment, dedication that it takes to really go through that and follow that through and finally accomplish that. It's something, it's another transferable skill that you could bring out here to the world with you that you're gonna need. A lot of us spend a lot of time in prison. So when we come home, we're behind the 8 ball in a major way. And I feel like this education is something that helps us, kind of level the playing field. And I use a term from the video from one of my brothers, John Yang, that he said in the video, to level the playing field and actually, help us acclimate better to this society, to this world. It gets us in the frame of mind of continuing to learn. And when you're out here and have been gone for so long, you need to learn, and you need to learn quick. And getting in the habit of doing that while going to college, reading, communication skills that we develop in there are crucial to our success when we come home as returning citizens. So I could go on forever and ever about, the virtues of education, especially in that environment, which is one of the biggest things that I feel we need. Just look at the recidivism rate of people who receive an education while they're incarcerated. It reduces dramatically, and increases, the chances for success in just the same. So for me, it has done that. So I could speak to how it's impacted me as I'm out here right now. And I just got out. You know what I mean? I'm still fresh home, as a lot of us, call it 6 months. It's not much time. I'm still transitioning, but I've been fortunate enough to be in a position where my education, I'm recalling back on a lot of the things that I learned, on a lot of the skills that I developed while going to college, and serving me well. And I'm super thankful. And I think that this is something that needs to be offered not just to a select few, but to the majority. And I will forever espouse, the transformational, powers of education, in any environment, let alone in prison. So definitely.
Thank you so much, Charles. And I want to just say a couple of things following your comments. One, EPI has gone on to create a reentry program called Recoup, Reentry in College Outside Program, which we've worked with Charles in. That is not talked about in the book because the book was in production by early 2021, and we started Recoup in the fall of 2021. So there will have to be a sequel of some sort, but I recognize that's an omission because the reentry work has been really central to what we're doing as a program more and more over the years, but it was not in operation at the time that the book was coming together. So it's just a topic that's not covered there. And the other thing is, Charles himself is not an author in the book, but the author that is featured in the book is not able to connect with us on the call. So I invited Charles to participate, to be able to represent the voice of students who had participated in EPI. And for those that do get their hands on the book, Alexander X's chapter 10, called Learning to Live, talks about his experience of access to education. And Charles, I appreciate you being able to lift up that voice in this space.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity.
So at this point, I think we have plenty of time for questions. I see a handful of, or a couple questions and comments in the chat, but also folks should feel free to raise their electronic hands, I guess might be the easiest way to do that, and just offer any questions that they'd like us to address.
There is a question about accreditation in the chat, Manisha, so I can respond to that. So this was from Cece and asked about how we view the role of the accrediting agencies in this process. Is it helpful or hindering? And how involved are they in the conversation to truly understand what it takes to implement prison education programs? So I can only speak on behalf of our involvement with NECHI, both being accredited by NECHI, and then I've also been an external evaluator for prison education programs for NECHI. And I think that they have a strong commitment to sending in external evaluators who are either directly involved in college and prison programs or are educated about it and understand that there's particular realities and nuances that shape what we're able to do in the carceral environment versus the traditional campus. So our relationship with the accreditor during our processes have been really positive, and they've helped us think through some of the challenges that come up, like, for example, around contact hours. Do you have to keep the same exact calendar that's kept on the main campus, or do you have flexibility in the frequency in which you meet with students as long as you meet the contact hours? Those kinds of things come up, and sometimes, the college is well-intentioned, but they're trying to understand how they meet the accreditation standards, and they're worried that if things aren't exactly the same, that could jeopardize our accreditation. So having people who are knowledgeable at NECHI to go to who can say, no, it's the contact hours that matter, not if you have the same exact meet times each week as the traditional campus. I mean, those are some of the things that have come up, and we've been able to work through them with. So for us, it's definitely been helpful, and helped us really have high standards and also meet the particular carceral needs of our program.
Kara, if I could ask a question, you wrote the chapter on preparing to go inside and teach, the logistics, if you will. And I'm hoping that you could share maybe some of the if I had known moments that you had as a prison educator, or as from what you've heard from other people, because I think hindsight is always 20/20, and we can feel like we're very prepared and we can think things through. But are there areas where, if you could go back, you would have done things differently, or things that new educators would benefit from hearing now?
Excuse me, I can think about this in two ways, both as a faculty who's taught in the program, and then also as assistant director who's doing the logistics and coordinating, administrative work of the program. EPI does a lot of front loading. We have to do things way, way in advance, in part to meet DOC's timelines for approval of our program each year, in part because it is complicated to get security clearances, to get materials clearances, to prepare faculty for what it means to teach inside of a prison. And we can't do things last minute. So I think, one of the things that we've really learned is being very organized, front loading as much as possible, and hiring faculty who are good communicators, who can work with your front loading and organizational needs, is really essential to a smooth running of a semester. So that has been really essential. In terms of a faculty, as a professor going inside to teach, a lot of our faculty, myself included, had never been inside of a working prison before teaching for the program. And prisons are sites of trauma, and it's of course complicated to go into that space and to teach these wonderful students. And they have to stay, and you get to leave, and it's harder for them than it is for us. But to navigate that as a professor, I think everybody handles it in their own way. But one of the things we've learned is we need faculty to be teaching or to be thinking about this long before they step inside the classroom for the first time, to really give thought about what it means to teach in that space. And, people come to us with just different backgrounds, different experiences. And, some folks are really up for the challenge, and for others, it can be more complicated. And so one of the things we're trying to do is, be really clear on what the expectations are up front, and to try and weed out people who we think aren't going to be good matches before the semester starts, to limit some of the the kinds of complications there. But we really want faculty to teach their expertise. We want the classes to be as similar as possible as what happens on the main campus. They shouldn't be teaching remedial classes or classes that they think incarcerated students need. No, come teach what you love, come teach what your expertise is, and the students are going to be there for it.
And if I can just briefly add, I think one of the reasons that I wanted to bring together these various case studies into a book is because there's still a fairly small amount that's written on this work in terms of preparing to teach inside and some of the ethical and social considerations that come up in teaching inside. There certainly are a handful of great volumes out there. Rebecca Ginsburg's edited book and others in the field are really required reading for a lot of us in this space. But I had faculty members coming to me over the years saying, what should I read to prepare to start thinking about this in a way that will help get me ready? And I realized that I didn't quite have the perfect thing. After they had read some of those baseline literature in the field, I wanted there to be another thing to recommend them. And so this book is, in that way, it is speaking more to faculty and administrators than to students, but it's trying to bring in reflections on who our students are, and also a student perspective through the one chapter that we do include. But it's, the work can be very lonely and isolating, especially at institutions where it's only a small handful of people that are doing this work and everyone else is teaching traditional students on a traditional campus. And so making space to have dialogue and learning around the specific examples, as Kara said, to be able to help people prepare to make sure they're going in to teach for the right reasons and that they're going to bring something that is useful for the program and not something that is voyeuristic or so enwrapped in their own trauma that it ends up creating problems for the classroom or academic environment.
Important considerations. I see that Meg has her hand raised. Feel free to come off mute, Meg.
Thank you. I was going to write out my question and I was like, oh, I can't type that fast. I was wondering if you all could talk about your advising process. What does that look like, especially at the beginning, from both, the faculty perspective, are there dedicated advisors, and from the student perspective? I know a lot of folks sometimes aren't, if they're going into a college and prison program, they're not coming straight from high school. They're not coming in the same way that some of our traditional main campus students are coming. And so I'm wondering how you kind of adapt policies and what's been most effective and what students prefer.
Yeah, I'll take first approach at this, and then Kara, I'll leave like the registrar answer to you. So the first thing that is still small scale about our program is that students move through the curricular pathway that Kara showed as a group. So I know some programs allow students to say, I'm going to take one class this semester, I'm going to take this particular spread of classes. Our students, if they're enrolled in the program, there's an expectation that they're enrolled full-time in all of the classes that are offered at their particular degree year in a given academic semester. So to some extent that consolidates the advising while also limiting student choice. And we're very aware that that constrains student agency and being able to select what they offer. But it also means that we're able to move people through to a bachelor's degree in 4 to 4.5 years. I think even Charles's year with COVID was a 4.5-year degree, and we're on track for the next group to do a 4-year degree. So that diminishes the individualized advising that is happening. Of course, we have students that end up in very individual circumstances. Some of those are transfer students who have brought credits with them either from another college and prison program or from a college program on the outside. And Kara works with our registrar to have those credits evaluated and figure out what can transfer. But we also have students who may be moved into segregated housing into restricted movement units and are unable to attend class for a period of time, or they're transferred out of state for a period of time to address an aspect of their case. Kara then works with our team to make an individualized curricular pathway for that student. And it's usually been me or Kara or our site coordinator, so EPI's leadership team, going in and meeting one-on-one with students as when we're wearing our academic advisor hats. And that has worked at the small scale that we have been at, but we're definitely thinking about what that looks like to scale, recognizing that a lot of other programs, and especially with the infusion of Pell, need to be thinking about larger numbers. I mean, I think that there is a perpetual trade-off between student agency and time towards timed until degree, so degree completion versus agency. And every program is going to have to decide for itself how to balance that particular trade-off. Ours at this point has been full-time enrollment is a condition of being in the program. But Kara, do you want to say anything more about the registrar or some of the other advising components?
Yeah, so what I will say is, as Manisha said, we have a cohort model, and students in a given cohort take all of the same classes unless there's some extraordinary circumstance that puts them off track. That limits their choice, right? Like, they have to take the classes we offer. One of the things we've done as we've grown as a program is go to the students and say, these are the requirements you have to meet. These are some potential options for courses that fill that requirement. What would you like, right? I think I can get a faculty to teach these different forms of the requirement. What most appeals to you? And, sometimes we're able to get to student interest that way. We can't do it for every single person, and they're like, distinct, disposition, but we have been able to bring student voice in that way. We do have, not a large number, but a number of students who've come in with transfer credits. And so we have worked with our registrar and getting the official transcripts and evaluating those transcripts, getting syllabi from the courses that they took when needed, and figuring out how they can apply to the degree. And we also, through Recoup, our reentry and college outside program, have had several students come and finish their degree at the Boston campus or in progress on finishing their degree. And it's kind of cool to engage in the advising process with them because it's very different. They have an academic advisor from Emerson's advising office, and we get to meet with that person once a semester and talk about what classes they want to take. All of our students so far have kept the degree program that we offer, the media, literature, and culture degree, but some have added minors or can really think about how they want to utilize their electives, and we can bring student choice in that way.
And also we added a minor in economics for the second and subsequent cohorts, because the feedback that we got from students in one of our semesterly feedback sessions was that they were interested in business, and we don't have a business school. We're not a business degree offering college, but the ability to create an economics minor was a way to try to address that student interest that was coming to us through student feedback. So it's constantly iterative in terms of what we're doing, and the minors, and also the process Kara described in terms of selecting the particular kinds of courses that fulfill these general categories of requirements has allowed us to most of the time feel like students are generally happy with the courses that are offered. And of course there will always be some bumps in the road.
And Manisha, there is a question from Jesse in the chat. Jesse writes, as you know, I currently teach website development inside the New Hampshire State Prison for Men. That's coming to an end, mostly because of increased restrictions on volunteers. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that EPI is currently 100% focused on liberal arts courses. Might you have any plans to expand into the computer science field?
Yeah, so Emerson College is a arts and communications school in a liberal arts context. That's its tagline, how it defines itself. So the degree that we offer is it's an interdisciplinary degree that includes what we would traditionally think of as liberal arts classes, but also draw on these professional fields like visual media arts. We do have a quantitative reasoning requirement in our gen ed, so we regularly offer some type of mathematics course for every undergraduate who's working towards their degree, as well as sequences of economics courses. So quantitatively, we have met the gen ed requirement in that way. We haven't offered computer science because the computer labs in Massachusetts have been challenging. They're often used for computer class certificate programs where the teachers have their own schedules and needs for that space. Since we do now have our offline laptops, we can think about what is possible in with that degree of technology. But because the tech access remains quite limited in Massachusetts, and I admit I'm not familiar with what it is in New Hampshire, so I don't know if it's significantly different or better, we haven't thought about something like a computer science degree, but that also wouldn't be a fit for our particular college because that's not what we do as a college. And I think part of the way that we've been able to consolidate institutional support at our institution is really to make the degree in the program that we're offering reflect the best of the institution that we are coming from. So having it be a media literature culture degree makes a lot of sense for Emerson to be offering that. But of course, we include quantitative reasoning the same way every student on the Boston campus has to take some sort of quantitative reasoning class, whether they like it or not.
And I will say we don't offer computer science classes at Emerson. So that's the other thing. It's, we have to teach courses that we can evaluate and run within the context of our curriculum. So there is interest in a coding class that's particularly challenging. We haven't been able to find a potential coding instructor. It can be taught offline, maybe not as dynamic, but we haven't been able to pull that together yet for a variety of reasons.
And I see from Jessica and Kimberly in the chat that you're amazed that we have laptops and you do have a computer lab, which is awesome. We didn't have laptops for years, so we kept asking for them, and their DOC wasn't ready to grant that request, but we continued to ask, and our students were amazingly persistent at handwriting and redrafting all of those long research papers by hand. But it has been a remarkable gift to the program to be able to have the laptop access. But I do think that that's where the relationship development with DOC was really important for us. So they weren't ready in year 1, 2, 3, or 4 to say yes to that request. But by the time we got to year 6, it was like, okay, here's all these specifications, and it was a process to figure out the right machine to meet their specifications. But now we have them, and it's been successful, and the students are typing up their papers and figuring out how to do a range of academic projects without the internet, but still benefiting from like a Microsoft Word package computer.
I think we have time for at least one more question, and I have a question if there are none in the chat, and it's for Charles. Charles, I know that you can speak from your experience as a student, not everybody's experience as a student, but I'm hoping that you can shed some light on student support and some of the effective ways that you received support on your academic journey while incarcerated.
Okay, well, I'll speak. And so as far as support, I feel that something that's very supportive of specifically EPI, I'm not too sure about other programs, but is the way that they teach it, right? So we're all together in one classroom. We all have to go through the academic journey together, just like Manisha mentioned. We really don't have the opportunity to take one class and then another student take 2 classes or whatever. So we're like on that journey together. So we really back each other up and support each other as much as we can. And we're together so much that we actually become like brothers in a sense as well. It really does create a community. And we're in a stressful environment, so we go through things. Our families may be going through stuff, and so we're not only there to support each other academically, but we're also there to support each other just in life in general. And the fact that we're together so much and we build that community, that allows for that to happen. Another thing is the tutors that they provide. So we have study halls, and they provide tutors that come in and help us, and that helps with the contact hours as well. And that also is a form of support that we have if we're struggling with a particular subject or a particular project. We have tutors that come in and help us and assist us with that. Also, we have the Partakers Program, which was created by a returning citizen. He did time himself, Arthur Bember. He came home and he developed the Partakers Program, which creates a bridge between people that are incarcerated, that are pursuing higher education, and people in the streets who want to support that endeavor. And I was able to meet 4 people who wanted to be my mentors throughout my academic journey, and some of these people are still in my life today. Like, and they've been super supportive. You know, it started with the academic process and support academically, but then it became just support in life in general because we became friends. And this is something that, you know, I think that is great. Partakers is great. And I found a lot of support, you know what I mean? And the fact that I was doing these things, these types of things, doing programs, doing, you know, going to college, family, you know, they got behind me 100%. Friends, you know, they got behind me 100% because, you know, when you're going to college and you're making that commitment, and it shows that you're serious about, you know, education and changing life in general. So the support, you know, builds momentum when you're in this year after year after year, and it creates that space. So I found a lot of support.
Thank you. We have 4 minutes. Any last minute questions for our panelists?
I just wanted to share a resource that I thought was really valuable. I put it in the chat. The Prison Math Project is a program that offers mathematical mentoring to incarcerated students, with the idea that students that really want to learn more about mathematics but don't have access to the resources, whether or not they're in a formal education program, and they match them up with a mathematician who will correspond with them and help in their development that way. It's a pretty cool program. So, and they are doing, the reason I thought of it is because of the question about teaching computer science. They're working on a way to actually help students learn to code who don't have access to a computer, where the students will write out their code by hand and mail it to someone who runs the code and sends them the feedback. Not particularly efficient, but you know, it's a way to get through.
Thank you for sharing that, Abby.
Yeah, and Abby, I was just going to say, I appreciated your comment as well, that the caliber of student engagement and focus for students behind the wall is so impressive. And that's definitely something that comes through in our book with faculty writing about their educative relationships with students, that it is really gratifying as faculty to teach students who are so dedicated to the learning process. And I mean, I think people rightfully are careful to not be self-serving in talking about why we do the work. But I think also, given that many of our programs rely on faculty volunteerism, even if we pay them a stipend, it does not cover what it costs mileage-wise, emotionally, amount of time it takes to prepare to all of those materials so far in advance. So the getting to have a deeply gratifying teaching learning exchange in the classroom is part of what faculty get out of it. And really, for many of us, feeling like the vision that we had hoped to have of ourselves as educators, like using education in some sort of transformative way, may or may not be available on our traditional campuses, but it generally is when we're working with incarcerated students. And I mean, I think it's important to talk about that, as faculty do in many of our chapters, because it is part of what continues to bring people back to be willing to teach, to be willing to go through the trap and be searched and, you know, be subject to the many processes that we require faculty to go through to go teach in the classroom. That sense of gratification of like core values of why many of us teach is something worth articulating, as you do in the chat and as the authors try to do, especially some of the literature professors write about that really explicitly in the book.
It's indescribable how wonderful it is to teach students who really want to be in the classroom and who will come up to me after class and tell me I skipped something, and they're holding me accountable because they want to learn everything that's there. And it's such a contrast to your traditional college campus. So.
Well, I think we're almost, go ahead, Charles.
No, I wanted to just second that, because that is very true. I remember one of our professors crying to us, literally in the classroom at the end of the semester, crying to us because we reinvigorated his passion for teaching. because of how engaged we were, and like actually considering not teaching anymore. And then he gave this a try, and then he was like, wow, like this is what I signed up to teach for. Like these are the type of students that I wanted to teach, because like when you're engaged like that, it's so fulfilling for a professor. So it feels good to be able to hear that and be able to have that impact on a professor.
It's huge. It's huge. And, you know, since my students aren't here, I will thank you for that. It's been a really extraordinary teaching experience for me.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, I will thank all of you for being here today, sharing your wisdom and the insights revealed in this wonderful, wonderful book. If you do not already have a copy, please run and get one. Thank you, Manisha, Kara, and Charles for your time. And thank you to everyone in the audience for attending today, our last community conversation of 2023.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to everyone. Thanks for participating.
Thank you.
For having me.
Bye.
All right.